Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at the next type of constraint, and that's the point constraint. The point constraint's nice and simple. Basically what it does is it constrains the position of objects to one another. So it's a little bit like the parent constraint, but without the rotation aspect. Okay, it's purely just position. So if we pop into the point constraint options just here, you'll see that it looks very, very similar to the parent constraint options, but there's no rotation values. Okay, so maintain offset, I'm going to activate that. And I've got my constraint axes to all. So that's going to be up, down, left, right, forwards, backwards. So X, Y, and Z axes as indicated by the little widget down here. So let's grab our controlling object. Let's grab our controlled object. And then just hit apply. You'll notice up here it's added the constraint to these three axes, which are highlighted blue. And if you've got your outliner open and your little hierarchy expansion active, you'll notice that the point constraint drops in here. Okay, so I'm just going to close that off. So as I was saying, basically this should control, you know, forwards, backwards, left, right, and up and down. Now, let's see what happens when we rotate this. With the parenting, when we rotated it, this object would kind of orbit around and follow the rotation. When I rotate this, absolutely nothing happens with this constrained object, no matter how I rotate this. And the reason for that is that this object is only reading the position of this object. It's not reading rotation or scale or anything else. Now what that means is anything that's not highlighted or indicated blue here, I can actually manually keyframe myself. So if I wanted to do some rotation like this, if I, for instance, kind of put this on a weird angle, and then I came back down here and I did this, notice how this doesn't revert back to its original position. It stays where I put it. Okay. Likewise, if I move this around, it doesn't rotate back to its original position, okay, because this object's rotation is still completely free and unconnected. So in other words, I'm controlling that. The constraint is not controlling the rotation, only the position. Now let's watch what happens if I reposition this, like down here, and then I move this. It jumps straight back out to where the constraint is telling it its position is in relation to the controlling object. Now, if I take all of these and I hit 0, it's going to reset them back to the middle of the grid. This one will move accordingly along with it. And if I take this one and I type in zeros for those in exactly the same way, you'll notice that the cube jumps back down into the middle of the grid. If I hit 4 on the keyboard, I can actually see that in wireframe in the middle there. Hitting 5 will take me back to shaded view. Now, if I move this big cube, if I select the control object and I move it, it's going to jump back out to position like that. And if I just reset that again, like that, you'll notice that if I move the timeline indicator, it doesn't move. Okay. Depending on what you're doing, sometimes if you move the timeline indicator, and you haven't keyframed something, it will jump back to where it was. You can see that with the constraint system, even though the little cube is being controlled by the big one and I'm changing the time frame, it's not actually forcing that to jump back to where it was. But as soon as I move this cube, it will jump. Okay. Now it won't do it if I rotate. It won't do it if I scale. Right? It'll only do it if I move, and that's because it's the move channels that are being controlled. So as soon as I grab any handle and I just tweak it even a pixel, bang, it'll jump back out to where it was. So the point constraint is great if you want an object to follow the position of something, but not do anything else like rotate or scale. So it works really well if you're trying to do maybe some kind of tracking kind of visual effect of some kind. You just want like an object to follow another object. And keep in mind, you can use these constraints on just about anything. It could be a light, it could be a camera. You know, you could connect a light to a camera, for instance, using a constraint. So, you know, if you stuck a point light, which is like a little light bulb, onto a camera using a point constraint, basically that light will radiate out from its position in all directions. So it doesn't matter how you rotate that that light source, it'll always illuminate the same way. You could point constraint that onto a camera, and then wherever you put that camera, it's always going to have a light source with it, in sort of the same way that you can attach lights or flashes to real-world cameras, for instance. So you could kind of create like a little lighting sort of camera hybrid rig using that. So, yep, point constraint. That's what it does. It's pretty basic, pretty simple. And a lot of the settings are kind of similar to the other constraints. I'm going to leave this video here, and I'll see you in the next one.